consume a food that you don't like just because it's healthy doesn't make any sense, because you're not going to enjoy your diet. If you don't enjoy your diet, you're going to stop following it. If you stop following it, you're going to fall into old habits. And if you fall into old habits, you're never going to be able to optimize your health and performance. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the 6 principles you need to follow to optimize your health and performance. But before I start, if you enjoy these types of videos, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. Now onto the topic at hand. What are the 6 principles you need to follow to optimize your health and performance? Well, before I get into the 6 principles, I just want you to know that I have covered a few of these in earlier videos. So if you don't want to watch the entire video because you've already seen some of the information and you would like to skip ahead to parts that I have not already covered, I will be including timestamps in the description. So if you want to skip ahead, go ahead, look in the description section, look at the timestamps and skip ahead to the section that you want to watch. Now on to the actual 6 principles. In order of these 6 principles, the way I'm going to order them is from least important to most important. And I would just like to state this before I even get into them, that every single one of these is going to be incredibly important. Just because I say that I'm ordering them from least to most, it does not mean that one is not important. Every single one of these is going to be incredibly important. I'm just going to be listing them in terms of how long you can survive without incorporating one of these principles. And just a quick word on exactly where these 6 foundation principles come from. Last week I had made a video on 4 steps to losing fat and keeping it off permanently and also optimizing your health. And in that video, I discussed the 4 doctors from Paul Chek. Paul Chek is a holistic health practitioner based out of California, and he was the one who came up with the 4 doctors. And these 6 foundation principles are also part of the teachings of Paul Chek, and you can pretty much subdivide the 4 doctors into these 6 categories. So each of these 6 principles will fall into one of those 4 doctors. It's just not quite as broad as those 4 doctors. And the first foundation principle is going to be movement. Now, I have covered movement earlier in other videos, and I just did a series on choosing the best exercises, so I don't want to get too deep into this topic. If you would like to watch that video from a couple days ago on choosing the best exercises and the best order of exercises for yourself, I will include a link right over here that you can click on. That way you can watch that. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. All I want to cover for movement is I want to get into what type of movements would be best for you, and that for the average person is going to be primal patterns. Primal patterns are essentially patterns where if you were to be dropped in the wilderness and be left alone, what are the movement patterns you would be able to do, or what would you need to do in order to survive in the wilderness all alone? And those are your pushing, pulling, bending, lunging, squatting, twisting, and gait patterns. The reason those are essential is because you require them on an everyday basis. Now, this was originally intended for if you were to be dropped in the woods, what you need to do to survive, but these movement patterns also correlate in today. In 2020, these still are incredibly relevant. And I will go through each one of those movement patterns and explain how exactly they correlate to your daily life. Whenever you have to stand up or sit down, you are going to be squatting. So a squatting pattern is something that you use every day. If you use stairs, every time you go up and down the stairs, you're going to be lunging. So that is why lunging is going to be incredibly important. Every single time you have to lift something up overhead, you're going to be pushing. Anytime you have to open up a door, you're going to be pulling. Anytime you have to pick something off of the floor, you're going to be bending. And anytime you have to walk, that is going to be your gait pattern. And when you walk, as one leg moves forward, the opposite arm is going to move forward, and that is going to cause a twisting motion of your torso. So gait and twisting are also going to be essential movement patterns. Now that we have covered the primal movement patterns, how exactly should you incorporate these into your training program? Well, when it comes to your training, it should be very specific to your level of physiological stress. Depending on whether you have a high level of physiological stress or a low level of physiological stress, that is going to dictate the intensity at which you work out and the types of exercises that you incorporate into your training program. Let's say you are a professional athlete with a very low level of physiological stress. Well, because you're a professional athlete, likely you've been training for 10, 20, sometimes 30 years. If you have a low level of physiological stress and you have been training for a long period of time, that type of person can handle very, very high intensities in the gym, and they can incorporate a lot more explosive and power type movements into their training program. Whereas, let's say you have somebody who has some medical issues, they have a very high level of physiological stress, and they've never trained a day in their life. Well, for that type of person, you don't want to overwhelm them. So if you are the type of person where you do have some medical issues and you've never trained before, you would want to start off with very low intensity exercises. Not only would you want to start off with low intensity exercises, but you wouldn't want to push yourself too hard in the beginning. What you would want to do is gradually build up a tolerance to the point where you can work harder and harder and harder every single time in the gym. But if you push yourself too hard right off the bat when you just join up to the gym, then that can be terrible for you, because instead of making you feel better, it will have the opposite effect and it will make you feel worse. Because if you have a high level of physiological stress, your body is already stressed. And by adding more stress on top of that in the form of training, then that is going to further add stress to your body, and that could lead to negative health consequences. Which is why, if you do have a very high level of physiological stress and you're new to training, you want to start out slow. What you can do is something like start out with only 20 minutes, work out for 20 minutes, build it up 5 minutes at a time until you get to about an hour. If you do that, then you'll find that it's going to be a lot easier for you to maintain that type of a program, and it won't deter you because you're not going to feel like crap after you leave the gym, and because you won't be deterred, then you will be able to sustain it and keep it over a longer period of time. And if the main objective is to optimize health and performance, you want to do something over the long run. You don't want to be able to just do it for a week and then quit. And speaking of sustainability, another key issue when it comes to movement and exercise in general is you want to make sure that you enjoy the workout and enjoy the exercises that you are performing. This is going to be more important for the average person. If you are a professional athlete, you're going to need to do the exercises that are going to optimize your performance in your sport. There's really no way around that. If you want to be the best at your sport, you're going to have to sometimes do exercises that you don't enjoy. However, if you are just an average person and you are trying to either lose weight, optimize your health, improve your performance, then you don't need to do exercises that you hate, even though they may be more effective than exercises that you like that are less effective. I will give one example. I was speaking to somebody in the comment section and I had made a video and I had explained how you don't need to do a squat even though it's a great exercise. If you hate doing squats and you hate them to the point where they deter you from going to the gym and it makes you quit the gym, then while squats are a great exercise and they should absolutely be incorporated into your program, if they're going to deter you from working out, then don't put them in your program. There are other exercises that you can do that will have the same response as a squat. And if you can find an exercise that's an alternative and you find it more enjoyable, that would be a better exercise to put into your program, because if it's more enjoyable, you're more likely to stick to your routine. If you're more likely to stick to your routine, you're more likely to see results over the long run. And that is the point of this video. We want to do things that are going to be sustainable over the long run, because anybody can do things to improve their health over the short period of time. But once you get to a point where you're happy with the way you look, feel, and perform, you want to be able to sustain that. And if you have a program that is not enjoyable to you and you're performing exercises that you don't enjoy, once you get to your goal, you're going to kind of put the gym aside or put exercise aside, and you're going to fall off the bandwagon, and you're going to end up getting into this yo-yo effect when it comes to your weight and your health. So choosing exercises that you enjoy is going to be very important when it comes to coming up with a sustainable exercise program. The last thing I want to discuss when it comes to movement is movement doesn't just refer to your exercise and what type of workouts you're doing. Movement also refers to what's going on internally. So that would be things like your blood flow, your bowel movements. So if you have things like hypertension, or if you have diarrhea, or if you are constipated, those are all going to negatively affect your movement, because it is negatively affecting your blood flow and your bowel movements. So movement does not just apply to what you do in terms of your activity, but it also applies to what's going on internally. So make sure that everything internally is going to be optimized as well. And when it comes to blood flow and bowel movements, I will be discussing that a little bit in the next topic. And that brings us to number two, the number 2 foundation principle, which is going to be nutrition. Nutrition is going to be absolutely pivotal when it comes to optimizing your health and performance. And one of the things with regard to nutrition that I preach to all of my clients is, if you don't like it, don't eat it. That is the best advice that I can give you when it comes to nutrition. You don't want to consume foods that you don't like, even if they're healthy. If you don't like them, there are plenty of healthy alternatives that you can find that you like, and that will optimize your health. So to consume a food that you don't like just because it's healthy doesn't make any sense, because you're not going to enjoy your diet. If you don't enjoy your diet, you're going to stop following it. If you stop following it, you're going to fall into old habits. And if you fall into old habits, you're never going to be able to optimize your health and performance. So you want to be able to find foods that you like, and if you like those foods, then you will be able to stick to those foods in the long run. And by sticking to those foods in the long run, that is how you are going to optimize your health and performance. When it comes to nutrition, another important thing is, depending on your goal, whether your goal is to lose weight, gain weight, maintain your weight, then the nutritional approach is going to be a little bit different. When it comes to weight gain or weight loss, in the end, it's going to come down to calories in versus calories out. There's no way about it. If your goal is to lose weight, you need to be in a caloric deficit. If your goal is to gain weight, you need to be in a caloric surplus. If your goal is to maintain your weight, then you need to be at a maintenance level of calories, which means your total energy expenditure, which is the number of calories you burn throughout the day, needs to be equal to your energy intake, which is the amount of calories that you take in through food. If your total daily energy expenditure is equal to your calories that you are taking in from food, then you are in a caloric balance and you are going to maintain your weight. If you decide that you want to lose weight, one thing worth noting when it comes to calories, I've mentioned this in other videos, 3,500 calories is roughly equal to 1 pound of fat. So if you are in a caloric surplus of 500 calories per day, that 500 times 7 days over the course of a week is equal to 3,500 calories, and that will be equal to 1 pound of fat loss per week if you are in a caloric deficit of 500 calories per day. Now, if your main objective is not to lose weight, you either want to optimize your performance or gain weight or maintain your weight, then you don't really need to calorie count, because if it's not directly related to your goal of losing weight, then it doesn't really make sense to calorie count. Instead, what you could do is intuitive eating, which is what I preach to most of my clients and what I do myself. I don't count calories. I don't teach my clients to count calories. I teach them to eat using their intuition. Now, this only works if you have good intuition. If you have good intuition, then this rule is great. If you are 500-600 pounds, your intuition led you to become 500-600 pounds, so you should not be doing intuitive eating. In the beginning, you're better off calorie counting. Once you've done calorie counting for a month, 2 months, and you have an idea of how many calories are in different foods, then you could gradually move toward intuitive eating, because intuitive eating is going to be more sustainable over the long run. Whereas calorie counting, you'll be able to do it for a month, maybe 2 months, but you're not going to be able to sustain it in the long run. So calorie counting is very good in the short term, but in terms of long-term health and performance, you're going to want to opt for intuitive eating versus calorie counting. But again, calories do matter. If you are trying to lose weight, you can't lose weight and be in a caloric surplus. You need to be in a caloric deficit in order to lose weight. Now that we've discussed intuitive eating, what is another way that you can incorporate nutrition that is going to optimize your health and performance? And that is going to be through a rotation diet. A rotation diet, simply put, is rotating your foods different days of the week so that you're not consuming the same foods within a given time period. One of the reasons why a rotation diet is really, really good is if you do have a negative reaction to a certain food and you eat that food on a regular basis, you may not know how negatively that food is impacting your body. Whereas if you do a rotation diet, you eat that food, you don't come back to it for another 4 or 5 days. When you come back to that food, if every time you consume that one food you notice an adverse reaction, you know it's that food, and then you have the education to remove that food from your diet. One way that I personally like to do my rotation diet is every either 4 or 5 days. What I've been doing the last few years, it's been a 5-day rotation. So something that you could do, let's say with your meats, you could do poultry on one day, you could do beef on another day, you can do fish on another day, you can do wild game meat on another day, and then every single 4 days you would just rotate your foods. So every first day is going to be poultry, every second day is going to be fish, every third day is going to be beef, every fourth day is going to be bison. Something like that. You can alternate it every 4 days, and by doing that, you'll better be able to see which foods are having a negative impact. Another thing that is similar to a rotation diet is going to be an elimination diet. An elimination diet is going to be great for anybody that has a lot of food sensitivities. What an elimination diet does, you basically take out all of your trigger foods, limit it down to a couple of foods that you know your body responds well to. Once you have done that for about a month, then you slowly reintroduce foods. So one thing that you could do is, let's say you limit all the foods and you are consuming only beef for 1 month. After 1 month, you can add in, let's say, chicken thighs. So for 2 to 3 days, you add in chicken thighs, see how your body responds. If your body does not have a negative reaction, then you know that that's a good food for you. You can move on to adding in another food. So let's say you add in something like sockeye salmon. 2-3 days, you incorporate sockeye salmon, see how your body feels, and you repeat that process until you find out which foods are best for your health and for your performance, and which foods are going to hinder your health and performance. If you have a negative reaction, don't eat those foods, put them aside. If you feel really good, you feel energetic, you have good mental clarity after you consume a certain food, those foods are going to be really good for you. Incorporate more of those foods into your diet. That's pretty much an elimination diet in a nutshell, and that's it for the second foundation principle of nutrition. That's going to bring us to the foundation principle number 3, which is going to be hydration. When it comes to hydration, water is going to be incredibly important for your body in terms of how it functions. Our bodies are roughly 60% water, so because our bodies are 60% water, that should tell you how important water is to our body's performance. If we don't have adequate water, that can wreak havoc on our joints, it can wreak havoc on our digestive health, it can also wreak havoc on our mental health. So water is going to be very, very important to incorporate when you are planning out your nutrition. When it comes to water intake, how much is a good amount of water to take? Well, as a general rule, half your body weight in ounces of drinking water is what you should be consuming on a regular basis. So let's say you weigh 200 pounds. A 200-pound person, if you divide that in half, is going to be 100. So 100 ounces is how much water a 200-pound individual should be drinking. In terms of converting that into liters, 100 ounces is roughly 3 liters. It's just shy of 3 liters. So somebody who's 200 pounds should be consuming 3 liters of water. Now, this is just a general recommendation. Things that will determine whether or not you need to add more or take out some water is going to be things like environmental factors. Let's say it's the summertime, it's really humid, you're outside a lot, you're sweating a lot. Because you're sweating a lot, that means your body is losing water through perspiration. So you want to be consuming more water on those days. Same things with exercise. If you are exercising incredibly intensely and you are sweating a lot, you want to consume more than that half your body weight in ounces because you are losing a lot of water through perspiration, and you want to make up for that by incorporating more water because it's going to negatively affect you if you don't consume as much as you need to consume. Same can apply for cold weather. If it's really cold, you're staying inside, you're not really working out a lot, and you're not sweating, then you could probably get away with a little bit less. Generally, I like to say half your body weight in ounces as a bare minimum, but if you are incredibly overweight, let's say you're 500, 600 pounds, then that's going to throw off how much water you actually need. If you're at a normal weight, or even if you are overweight but not severely overweight, then that half your body weight in ounces is going to be a good rule to follow. However, if you are severely overweight, then you don't need to consume quite as much. Consume as much as you possibly can, but you don't need to consume half your body weight in ounces if you are 500 or 600 pounds, because you would just never be able to actually consume that amount on a daily basis. But for the average person, that's a really good rule to follow. And another word when it comes to water is going to be salt intake. One of the things when it comes to water consumption is a lot of people just drink naked water. Naked water is just filtered water that has no minerals left in it. Me personally, I drink a lot of distilled water, and the thing that's great about distilled water is all of the bad stuff gets filtered out of the distilled water, so you're only left with clean drinking water. The bad thing is that all the good stuff, like the electrolytes, all the vitamins, minerals that are naturally found in the water, are going to be wiped out during the distillation process. So something that I like to do is incorporate some salt and some electrolytes into my drinking water. When it comes to salt in your drinking water, you want to put just enough salt that you can't taste it. If you put salt in your drinking water and you can taste the salt, then you've put too much. You need to put less the next time. And when it comes to electrolytes, one thing that I like to do is put some electrolyte drops into my drinking water. I have a 1-gallon jug that I drink every single day. And in that 1-gallon jug, I have this product. It's called Concentrates Mineral Drops. It's made from Manal. And I'll put 5 milliliters in a 1-gallon jug. Electrolytes, why are they important? Well, without electrolytes, your body can just shut down on you. You could get really bad cramps. It's going to negatively impact your workouts. Your muscles won't be able to contract as efficiently. So electrolytes and salt is going to be very important to incorporate into your diet when you are trying to optimize your health and performance. But again, you don't want to overdo it, because if you overdo it, then you can create an imbalance in the different minerals in your body. So you want just enough to where you're feeling good. Another word with regard to salt and electrolytes: if you consume too much salt and too much electrolytes, it could lead to things like loose stool and diarrhea. This is something that happened to me when I started the carnivore diet in March. I typically put a lot of salt on my food, and usually I would put salt in my water and I would also salt my food. But what I noticed on the carnivore diet was, because I was putting a lot more salt than usual on my food, I was getting some loose stool. So by removing the salt from the water, that disappeared completely. So for me personally, I would rather have the salt in my food because it makes the food taste a lot better than salting my water. But for the last 10 years, up until March, I've been always salting my water because I wasn't putting quite as much salt on my food. It's going to come down to personal preference though. If you're the type of person that enjoys salting your food a lot, then you could probably get away with not putting the salt in your water. If you're the type of person that doesn't like to salt your food, then put a little bit of salt in your water and you could avoid salting your food. See which one you prefer. It's going to come down to personal preference. And one final word with regard to salt intake is that you want to make sure that you are consuming clean, healthy salt like pink Himalayan salt or some Celtic sea salt. Ideally, the salt, you want it to have some type of color to it. It should be pink, gray, blue. If it's white, it means it's been bleached and stripped of all its companion elements. If you are consuming white table salt, all you are getting in that table salt is sodium and chloride. Whereas with Himalayan sea salt or with Celtic sea salt, while it is predominantly sodium and chloride, you are getting all of those trace minerals, things like sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. So you want to consume colored sea salts as opposed to bleached white table salt because it's going to be much better for optimizing your health and performance. This brings us to foundation principle number 4, which is going to be sleep. Sleep is going to be incredibly important because our sleep is when we rest and repair our bodies. Without adequate amount of sleep, our bodies are not going to be able to repair itself, and if our bodies don't repair ourselves, then we're not going to be able to function at an optimal level. So we want to be able to get an adequate amount of sleep to function at an optimal level. Now, how much is an adequate amount of sleep? Well, this, as with everything else, is going to come down to personal preference, and it's going to come down to an individual basis. Some people can get away with less sleep. Some people are going to require more sleep. But on average, the average person is going to need about 8 hours of sleep to function at an optimal level. There have been studies done that show that roughly 1 to 3% of the population can function at an optimal level at less than 6 hours of sleep. But for the average person, 8 hours of sleep is going to be roughly what you need to get in order to function at an optimal level. Some people will need more, some people will need less, but that is going to be the average person. Another thing when it comes to sleep is the time that you go to sleep. Ideally, we would not have things like lights keeping us awake at night, and we would just go and use the sun as our guide when it is time to fall asleep. So as the sun comes down, we would sleep. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you interpret it, based on the way that we live our lives right now, we have a lot of artificial light all around us. And that artificial light has allowed us to stay awake longer and longer because we have all of this stimulation. The more light that is constantly blaring in our faces, that's going to stimulate us. And the more stimulated we become, the more difficult it's going to be to fall asleep. And the more difficult it's going to be to not only fall asleep, but to get a nice deep sleep. And getting a nice deep sleep is going to be very important at optimizing your health and performance. So because we have all of these artificial lights and we can't really use the sun to guide us in terms of when we need to fall asleep, a general rule would be have your head on the pillow by 10:30 p.m. If you have your head on the pillow by 10:30 p.m., then that'll give you roughly 8 hours of sleep if you're waking up at around 6 a.m. Another thing with regard to sleep is going to be electronics. Electronics can have a very negative impact on your sleep quality. One of the reasons why electronics are going to be a hindrance on our sleep quality is going to be the blue light that they emit. Every single smartphone that we have, they all have blue light that gets emitted, and that blue light is going to suppress your body's production of melatonin. Melatonin is something that allows you to fall asleep, and it allows you to get into a nice deep sleep. So if you're on your phone before bed, your body is going to have suppressed levels of melatonin, and that's going to negatively impact the way you sleep and the quality of your sleep as well. So removing electronics from the bedroom is going to be very important if you want to optimize your health and performance and if you want to optimize your sleep patterns. Because by removing electronics, you can get rid of that blue light, and by getting rid of the blue light, your body is going to produce adequate amounts of melatonin at the proper time, and it's going to allow you to get into a much deeper sleep, and it's going to make it easier to actually fall asleep. Another thing with regard to lights is going to be your phone. Your phone, not only does it emit blue light, but the other thing with phone is the waves that are emitted are going to negatively impact your sleep. There was a study done recently, and what they found was people that use their phone before bed, even if it is on airplane mode, if you are on your phone and it is on airplane mode, your delta brain waves are going to be suppressed for up to 1 hour. And your delta brain waves, as far as we know right now, those are the best ways of determining how deep of a sleep you are getting. So if your delta brain waves are suppressed for 1 hour, that is going to negatively impact the deepness of the sleep that you get. So you want to remove your phone from the bedroom. I know a lot of people like to use their phones as their alarm clocks. I used to do that all the time too. However, ever since moving my phone to the basement, I found that my sleep has improved dramatically. Another thing with regard to improving your sleep quality is you want to make sure that it is pitch black in your room. You don't want any light whatsoever in there. If you can get something like blackout curtains, that'll help. If you can get an analog clock as opposed to a digital clock, that'll help. Ideally, you want no light in your room. No light, and you also want it at the proper temperature. Generally speaking, most people are going to get a much deeper sleep and find it easier to fall asleep if it is a little bit cooler in the room. So if you are having trouble sleeping and you find that you're just sweating at night and you can't fall asleep just because it's so hot, try putting in a fan or try turning the AC up, and that will help to improve your sleep quality, and also it will help to make you fall asleep a lot quicker. One final thing when it comes to sleep that will help dramatically will be to incorporate a pre-bed ritual. Ideally, if you can do something before you go to bed 1 to 2 hours every single night, then that will help you fall asleep, because what's going to happen is by creating a pre-bed ritual, you want to do things that are going to help to bring your body into more of a parasympathetic state. You have two states. You have sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic is your fight or flight. Parasympathetic is your rest or digest. So because parasympathetic is your rest or digest, it is going to help you calm down, which is going to make it much easier for you to fall asleep at night. Some of the things that you could do in terms of a pre-bed ritual would be taking a hot Epsom salt bath. You could read a book. You can write out a list of all the things you need to accomplish the next day. That way that will put your mind at ease and you won't be thinking about it while you're in bed. And another thing, something that I recommend to all my clients that's really great, I do myself and it helps a lot, is keeping a grateful log. By keeping a grateful log, it will help to put you in a parasympathetic state, because it's going to calm you down, because it's going to help to remind you of the good things that happen throughout your day. 3 questions that you can answer when you are doing a grateful log. 1 is going to be, what am I grateful for today? 2 is going to be, what is something that somebody did for me that was helpful today? And 3 is going to be, what did I do to help somebody today? The reason those 3 questions are very important is, again, they're going to put you in a more parasympathetic state by calming your mind down. The reason it's going to calm your mind down is because if you can think of things that you're grateful for, then that will put your mind at ease. And also by those 2 other questions, the how did somebody help me and how did I help somebody, throughout your day, it's going to force you to look out for the ways in which people have helped you, and it's going to make you want to find ways to help other people, because if you know you have to write it out before you go to bed, you're going to be more likely to do those things. And by focusing more on the positives in life as opposed to the negatives, that's going to put you in a more parasympathetic state, because your mind is going to be more calm, which is going to allow you to have much better sleep and sleep much more deeply if you are in a more parasympathetic state. That's number 4. The number 5 foundation principle is going to be breathing. Breathing obviously is very important. If you're not breathing, you're not going to be able to live for very long. So you want to make sure that you have optimal breathing patterns. Most people tend to have an inverse breathing pattern. What that means is that they breathe the opposite way of the way that their body is naturally supposed to breathe. We are supposed to breathe in 3D. What that means is that we want lateral expansion, we want expansion front to back, and we also want vertical expansion. And when it comes to breathing, ideally the first 2/3 of the breath should come from the stomach. The final third should come from your chest. That is going to be on the inhale. When you exhale, it's the opposite. The first third of your exhale, your chest should come down, and then the last 2/3, your stomach should come down. So you inhale, first 2/3, stomach expands, last third, chest expands. Exhale, the first third of the exhale, the chest comes down, the last 2/3, the stomach comes down. That is going to be an optimal breathing pattern. And when it comes to breathing patterns, another thing is a lot of people are very shallow breathers. You want to be able to take nice deep breaths. By taking a nice deep breath, you're going to give your body more oxygen. By giving your body more oxygen, you're going to have more energy. And by having more energy, you're just going to feel better throughout the day. If you are a shallow breather and you're constantly taking very shallow breaths throughout the day, it's going to put you in a more sympathetic state, which is going to put your body in a higher level of physiological stress, and that will have negative impacts on your health in the long run. So you want to be able to take nice, deep breaths. You want to work on fixing your inverted breathing pattern if it is something that you have. And finally, when it comes to breathing, is depending on whether you are just breathing anatomically versus breathing for vigorous exercise, it's going to be a different pattern. Generally speaking, when we are talking about anatomical breathing, inhaling, so that is going to be coupled with extension of the spine, external rotation of the shoulders, and when we talk about exhaling, exhaling is going to be coupled with flexion and internal rotation. So when we are doing anatomical breathing, whenever we are doing extension or external rotation in terms of exercise, we want to be inhaling. Whenever we are flexing and internally rotating, we want to be exhaling. This is only true if we are doing low intensity exercise below 60% of your 1 repetition maximum. If you are doing 60% or higher, then you want to breathe according to the eccentric and concentric portion of the exercise. Eccentric is going to be the lowering phase of the exercise. Concentric is going to be the lifting phase. So let's say in a bench press, concentric is the push. So you're going to exhale on the push. Eccentric is lowering it to the chest. So you're going to inhale as you lower it to the chest. Let's say for a squat, the eccentric is going to be the lowering phase. So you're going to inhale as you lower. The concentric phase is going to be exhale because you stand up. That's the concentric phase. So you're going to exhale as you stand up. That is how you breathe when you are training. But anatomical breathing, you want to go based off of whether you're doing flexion and internal rotation or if you are doing extension and external rotation. So let's say you are doing a bodyweight squat for 50 repetitions at a very slow pace and you are doing it more just to optimize the way your body is going to function. Then the breathing pattern would become reversed because when you squat down, you are going into flexion and internal rotation. So when you squat down, you would be exhaling. And then when you squat up, you would be inhaling because as you stand up, you're coming into extension and external rotation. So depending on the intensity of the exercise, that is going to dictate the type of breathing that you do during the exercise. That's pretty much it for when it comes to breathing. The next thing I want to discuss, this is the final foundation principle. This is foundation principle number 6, and it is thoughts. Thoughts, out of the 6 that I just listed, this one is going to be the most important. And the reason this is the most important is because if we don't think, then we are not human. Our consciousness is what makes us human. So without the ability to think, we are not alive. So thinking is going to be the most important of all these different patterns. When it comes to thinking, a few things that we want to note, I've discussed this in several videos, but never quite at length, and that is you want to establish your core values. Your core values, those are the things that mean the most to you. At the end of the day, when you leave this planet, what do you need to accomplish in order that you could leave this planet feeling fulfilled? If you value your health, then that is going to help to dictate where you should do your goal setting. If you value mental health, if you value physical health, if you value friends and family, if you value social work, then all of these different types of values are going to have different goals in order to relate them to your core values. So you want to make sure that you have a good set of core values in place. And in order to determine what your core values are, you can go on a list, just type in core values, look up a list, and see which ones resonate with you, which ones are the most important, which ones are going to mean the most to you in order to bring balance to your life. If you value physical health, then working out is going to be a good goal to have because working out is going to directly correlate to your core value of physical health. If you value mental health, then working out can be important to that goal. For me personally, when I was in high school, I suffered with depression a little bit, and working out really improved my mental health. So for me, working out is a really good goal to have because that directly correlates to one of my core values of improving my mental health. And for me, when I work out, I just feel much better mentally. Another example of a core value that you could have is friends and family. Let's say your core value is friends and family. Working out is not going to directly correlate to that goal. However, something like going on trips, going to the movies with friends, those will correlate. So having a goal of spending more quality time with your friends and family, if your core value is friends and family, would be a good goal to set because spending more time with your friends and family is going to directly correlate to your core value of your friends and family. So you want to make sure that 1, you have a core value. 2, once you've established what your core values are, you set realistic goals, and those goals should be based off of what your core values are. Once you base your goals on your core values, you want to bust your butt to achieve those goals because if you achieve those goals and those goals are in line with your core values, then that is going to lead to fulfillment. At the end of the day, when you leave this earth, if you accomplished all your goals, you can leave this earth satisfied and you will know that you've done everything that you've wanted to accomplish. Whereas if you value friends and family and your entire life you spend all of your time, energy, and effort into getting as much money as possible, being the top CEO in the country, well, At the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, you're going to be unfulfilled because while your core value was friends and family, you spent your entire life chasing the goal of accumulating money and power. And money and power and friends and family are two different goals. So if you value something like friends and family, your goal should not be to accumulate as much wealth and be the top CEO in the country, because that does not directly correlate to your core value of friends and family. So you want to make sure that your goals directly correlate to your core values if you want to have fulfillment in your life and if you want to leave this earth being completely happy with everything that you've accomplished. If you do that, by the time you leave this planet, you are going to be happy and fulfilled with everything that you've accomplished in your life. Another thing when it comes to thoughts is going to be you want to do things that are going to improve your mental health, and things like meditation are a great way to improve your mental health. When you do a meditation, you are clearing out your mind, or at least you're trying to clear out your mind. That is one of the main goals of meditation. And by clearing out your mind, it will allow for more introspection, it will allow for more self-reflection, and it will also put you in a more parasympathetic state. Again, parasympathetic is your rest or digest. That's when your body calms down instead of ramping up when you're in a sympathetic state. Another thing with regard to meditation is if you are having trouble on determining what exactly are your core values, meditation is a great way to clear your mind and really think about the things that are important to you. So having a good meditation practice in place would be a terrific way to get in touch with yourself. And by getting in touch with yourself, it will allow you to better determine what are your core values. And if you know what your core values are, then you could set those realistic goals that relate back to your core values. So meditation would be absolutely terrific at determining your core values if you're having trouble figuring out what exactly they are. Another thing with regard to your mental health and just your thoughts in general is spending 1 hour of me time every single day. If you can spend 1 hour every single day doing something that you enjoy, that is completely selfish, you're not doing this for other people, it is just for yourself, that is going to have a tremendous impact on your mental health. Because if you can spend 1 hour a day doing something that you enjoy, again, it's going to put you into a more parasympathetic state. You're going to feel really, really good, and you won't build up resentment. A lot of times I'll see with clients that have trouble saying no to people, that they're constantly helping other people and never helping themselves, and they end up getting this resentment toward those people. I had one client who had a lot of problems with her father, and she just had a lot of negative experiences. She was never able to say no to him. Every single time her father would ask her to do something, she had to say yes. And more often than not, when she was asked to do something, it was always at the cost of doing something that she wanted to do for herself. So she would have to put her own thoughts, her own feelings, her own activities aside to help her father. And she ended up getting really resentful toward her father. So you want to be able to spend 1 hour doing me activities every single day. If you can do that, you will have better relationships in your life, because if you can spend 1 hour just doing something that you enjoy, you won't develop resentment for these people that are asking you to do things for them, because you will have already spent the time working on yourself. So once you've already worked on yourself, then it's not going to be such a hassle to help other people out as well. This is something that I've worked on a lot over the last decade. I've always been somebody that puts other people first and put my own issues to the side. So I've been working a lot the last few years on working more on myself and not being too much of a people pleaser. And it has made a tremendous impact on my life. It's still a little bit difficult for me when somebody asks me to do something. I do want to say yes and I do want to help them. But I do find that by setting boundaries and saying, okay, I'm willing to help you, but not until I help myself first, it is going to make a tremendous impact and improvement on your mental health. And another thing when it comes to mental health, I already discussed this in the sleep section, but that's going to be keeping a grateful log. If you keep a grateful log, every night, by reminding yourself what's something you're grateful for, what did somebody do to help you today, what's something that you did to help somebody else today, that's going to make you look for the bright side of things on a daily basis. You're going to be looking for the things that people did to help you. You're going to be looking for ways to help people. You're going to be looking for things that you're grateful for. And if you incorporate those into your daily routine, those 6 foundation principles are going to be the best way to optimize your health and performance. And at the beginning of the video, I stated that I was going to list these from least important to most important. So right now, again, every single one of these is incredibly important, but why exactly do I list them these ways? That is going to be in terms of survivability. In terms of how long you can survive, number 1 was movement. Well, you can go decades without moving and still survive. As an example, Christopher Reeves, he ended up becoming paralyzed. He was bedridden for decades. He was still alive for decades. Stephen Hawking, same thing. He was in a wheelchair for decades, still managed to survive while in a wheelchair for decades. So you can survive a long period of time without any movement. When it comes to nutrition, you can survive months without nutrition. As long as you get water, you can survive a long time without nutrition. When it comes to water, you can only survive a few days, maybe a month if you are incredibly lucky. But you can't survive that long without water. Without sleep, you can only survive a few days. Without breathing, you can only survive a few minutes if you have a really, really good breath. If you don't have good breath and you're not able to hold it for that long, then you can't even last a few minutes. You could last maybe a minute if you're lucky. And finally, when it comes to thoughts, I already discussed this, but if you're not thinking, if you're not conscious, then you are not human. Our thoughts are what make us human, and our consciousness is what makes us human. So the ability to think is what makes us human, and that's why thoughts are the number one most important thing. And the irony of this entire situation is that movement, nutrition, and hydration are the three least important out of these six, but those are the three that get discussed the most, and those are the three that everybody is constantly telling you that you need to do. Whereas the three most important things, sleep, breathing, and thoughts, the three things that if you were to stop sleeping, you wouldn't be able to survive more than a few days. If you were to stop breathing, you wouldn't be able to survive more than a few minutes. And if you didn't have the ability to think, you wouldn't even be human anymore. So those are the three most important things, and those are the three things that absolutely never get discussed. So that is why I prioritize them in this order, and that pretty much covers it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.